And I'm curious to know, this is just a personal question for me, is this is your way of really getting this into the spotlight, which is the threats of AI and how that could impact the economy and jobs and a lot of people's lives.
Yes.
But I'm curious to know, I'm trying to think, was this really the central way of getting that message out? Because I know you produced documentary to spread the message of entrepreneurship. Couldn't you technically have done something similar that doesn't put you in so much pressure and, I guess, in the spotlight? It's a very difficult decision to run for president.
Yeah, it's possible. And what's funny is I actually just came from a meeting where we're talking about a documentary about automation, sort of an
Okay, so you're
inconvenient
doing that
truth
as
about
well.
that.
Yeah,
I'm doing that too.
yeah.
We need to do everything we can.
Sure, sure.
But I would go on a limb and say that running for president is the most effective way to both get the message out there and also start to implement and enact real solutions. Because if you buy, which many, many people do, they buy the fact that automation is coming and it's already tearing giant holes in the labor market.
Right.
But then where people struggle is, okay, what do we do about that? Now, what I'm advocating is the freedom dividend, which is a universal basic income of $1,000 per adult per month. This would help Americans go back to school, move for new opportunities, start a new business, pay their bills, and generally just stay functional, keep their head up, and adapt to the new economy. Now, I'm very, very certain that that is exactly what we should do, and I outlined some of that in my book.
Yeah.
But most people are still struggling with what a meaningful solution to automation would be. And so I think that my campaign can double as both a way for people to discover that this issue is very real and very pressing, and also to consider what the next move should be and what the solution should be.
Can you talk to me a little bit about artificial intelligence in general? Because I'm trying to think of the crowd. I think a lot of people that are listening to this understand the basics of AI, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't really even know what AI is, artificial intelligence. It kind of sounds like a robot, or it's like one of those spaceships that you go on.
Sure.
But it's a real thing, and it's more than ever, it's being talked about with shows like Black Mirror that's coming out, there's Westworld. What is the reason that there's so much attention on artificial intelligence when really the technology has been around for about 20 years, right? It's really been talked about for a while.
Well, the truth is that AI does not need to be that genuinely intelligent in order to threaten the livelihoods of many, many Americans. Where, as an example, there are 2.5 million call center workers in the United States. Now, do you need genuine AI to outperform the average call center worker? Probably not. You just need like a really convincing software bot or script, and Google essentially is already there.
Yeah.
And so the AI discussion has a number of components, but what I'm focused on is what Americans actually do for a living right now. And the top 5 job categories in the United States are clerical work, including call centers, sales and retail, food service and food prep, truck driving, and manufacturing. So you don't need intelligent AI, what's called like general intelligence AI, to outperform call center workers. Retail, 10% of Americans work in retail, and 30% of malls are going to close in the next 4 years. And again, that's not AI, that's just commerce moving to Amazon.
Sure.
Fast food, food service, and food prep, a lot of that front of house stuff is getting automated away. Truck driving is the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million of them, 94% male, average age 49. So, you don't really think of AI as necessary for automating truck driving or taxi driving, but that is a form of AI. So,
Sure.
So those are the issues to me that we should be focused on. And then when you get into the speculative, the true general intelligence AI, then all bets are off.
Right. That's even uncontrollable.
Yes. So we're going to have massive problems before we get there. And that's true by the numbers right now. If you look at the numbers, right now the U.S.'s labor force participation rate is down to 62.9%, which is the same level as El Salvador and the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
Because of the automation of manufacturing workers. Those manufacturing workers did not find new jobs. They left the workforce and they went on disability. And many of them started killing themselves, which is why our life expectancy has declined for the last 2 years. Again, the numbers are very stark and they're very real, but they tell a clear picture as to what will happen to the next groups of workers that lose their jobs due to automation.
And when do you think this will really take a major force in terms of impacting the jobs in America or just around the world?
Well, again, we're in the midst of it. We're like the third or fourth inning. And when I was doing research for my book, that's really what I uncovered that shocked me, which is this is no longer speculative. This is like inning number 3. And so some of the segments I focus on really are, if you just say freight, retail, call centers, in total, that's enough to push us into record levels of dysfunction and disability. I mean, those 3 categories alone employ over 10 million Americans.
Wow, that's insane. And that already, we're talking about Google already having better technology to be able to
Yes.
replace those people. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's why I'm running for president, man. I mean, we live in genuinely dangerous times where things that we imagine as distant future or science fiction are here with us today.
coming.
Yeah, it's right now.
And I think it's Ray Kurzweil and a lot of futurists that are talking about the exponential increase of how fast the technology is evolving. So even though we're at third inning right now, the exponential curve of it it could be a lot faster in the next 5 years. We don't know how fast the technology is going to be improved.
Yeah, my friends in Silicon Valley are getting increasingly confident about AI. There's a saying out there that AI is the new electricity. And they're going to be able to do things with AI that right now take departments of hundreds or even thousands of humans.
Right. So some people that are watching this may argue that we've kind of gone through a similar transition, obviously not as big, where, there was a lot of farmers back in 1950s,
Yes.
1940s, and through the Industrial Revolution, but people ended up automating a lot of the things that farmers are doing, but now we have new jobs. So a lot of people are arguing about the same thing with AI is, I think there's like 1.8 million jobs that are going to be taken, but it's going to be replaced with 2.3 million jobs. So is that something, and obviously people have different opinions, but
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that for people that are trying to make that argument on the other side?
I have to say it's a bad sign when someone has to reach back 120 years and say, factories, like Industrial Revolution. Where if you look at the numbers, according to Bain, the labor absorption rate during this period is going to have to be 4 times higher than the Industrial Revolution. And during the Industrial Revolution, there was actually massive unrest. Like Labor Day was inaugurated in response to a series of riots that killed dozens of people and caused billions of dollars worth of damage. Labor unions arose in 1886 because of the working conditions, and they fought for 40-hour work weeks and no child labor and overtime, all of this stuff. So even if you were to use history as a reference point, you would expect really tough times.
Yeah.
But then by the numbers, this is going to impact a larger number of people at a faster rate than anything we have seen before. And that's not me talking.
Yeah.
That's McKinsey, Bain, MIT, all have drawn the same conclusions. And if we had a functional government, they would say, hey, this is a society-wide problem we need to get our arms around. But because our government is this backwards mess, then we're paying attention to cultural food fights instead of the technological and economic issues that are truly driving the problems.
Sure. And let's say this is inevitable, this is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. What is the solution? You're saying it's the freedom dividend where you're providing universal basic income, everyone gets $1,000 a month. Does this include people like entrepreneurs or CEOs that are making millions of dollars?
Sure.
How do you divide that and how do you allocate it so that it's fair and people that really need the money are getting it? And how do you allocate that?
Well, I've got 3 big steps that we need to take. So the first is this freedom dividend, which is not means tested. You get it, I get it. The single mom gets it. Like everyone gets it.
Okay.
And then the second thing is we need to implement new measuring sticks for the economy, because relying on GDP and stock market growth and profit growth are going to end up leading us in the wrong directions over time, where GDP is going to go up and up, but more and more people are going to be left behind.
Right.
So we need new measurements that actually speak to how we're doing as a people, like childhood success rates or levels of engagement with work or mental health and freedom from substance abuse, environmental quality, arts and creativity, all things that we value that we can directly measure instead of relying upon GDP to tell us how we're doing. We made up GDP less than 100 years ago during the Great Depression, and even its creator said, hey, this is not a perfect measurement.
Right.
And now we rely upon it way too much. The third thing is we need to implement a new digital social currency that maps to pro-social behaviors and activities that we value, like taking care of the elderly, nurturing your children, volunteering in the community, journalism, doing things that are valuable, because more and more people are going to be pushed into a situation where they're going to need more means to structure and organize their time. I'm very pro-work. I'm an Asian guy, so there's no.
You're about the hustle, right?
Well, yeah, it's just you need like the facts are clear that without work, people suffer. So we need to create new forms of work that more Americans can access independent of their skill level, because everyone has something that they can offer at the most basic human level, and that's what we need to reward and create a new parallel economy around, using a new currency that I would call the digital social credit. So all of this is to evolve to the next stage of capitalism, which I call human-centered capitalism or human capitalism, because the capital markets will value human qualities and human labor less and less over time. And so we need to transition to a new set of measurements if we are going to flourish and prosper in the years ahead.
Yeah, and this idea of universal basic income is not, it's been introduced. I think Martin Luther King was talking about it back in his day. And, obviously now you have Zuckerberg is also promoting it as well. And I'm glad someone like yourself is really putting this into the spotlight. I did want to ask you, which is the question that everyone asks, which is how you end up paying for it.
Sure.
I think there's a lot more information that people can look up, but if you want to just kind of quickly go over, because I know people are going to be asking, how do you pay $1,000 a month to 400 million people in the U.S.?
Yeah, there aren't that many of us. So you can go through the math on my website, yang2020.com.
Yeah.
But the big picture is that we need to implement a value-added tax, which is something that every society except for the U.S.
Yeah, Canada has it.
Yeah, every industrialized country has it because it's really effective. And income taxes are worse and worse at generating revenue if more and more work is done by software and AI and robots. So we need to shift to a value-added tax, which will harvest that revenue and allow us to make big changes. If we implement a value-added tax at half the European level, it would generate between $700 and $800 billion in revenue. And our economy right now is up to 19 trillion. It's grown by 4 trillion in the last 10 years. We can easily afford this. So if that gets you the first 700 to 800 billion, we spend another 500 billion currently on income support that's redundant. And so at this point, you're about 2/3 of the way there. And the greatest part that all entrepreneurs are going to love is that the Roosevelt Institute tried to measure the impact of giving you, me, and everyone else in America $1,000 a month. And not surprisingly, they found it would grow the economy by 13% or 2.5 trillion. And it would create 4.5 million new jobs in perpetuity. So for all of that economic growth, we get 25% back in revenue. And then we end up saving billions on things like incarceration and homelessness service and healthcare, because people that are getting $1,000 a month are less likely to turn up in the ER as their primary care in a way that we all end up paying for anyway.
Sure.
So universal basic income would end up paying for itself in so many ways. There was one study that showed that money spent on poverty ends up being multiplied 7x throughout the economy. And that's the kind of thing that we can see happen in communities around the country. Alaska has had a small universal basic income for 36 years, implemented by a Republican governor, the petroleum dividend, and now it's wildly popular. It's created thousands of jobs. It's reduced infant health problems. It's, again, deep red state, 36 years old, wildly popular. Yeah. There's no reason why we can't bring that to the other 49 states that are a little warmer and more pleasant than Alaska.
Definitely more pleasant.
No offense to Alaska.
No offense to Alaska.
But
it's
you're...
3:15, just giving you a heads up.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. No offense to Alaska, but it's cold there and dark.
So, and this is just like a practical question, but you're giving someone...
I'm probably not going to win in Alaska anyway.
Yeah. We can cut that part out.
No, it's fine. It's funny.
So, I mean, the thing is, like, you're giving someone $1,000 a month. And I've been in situations where, and this includes people that are homeless, I'm assuming, right? People that are really struggling out there.
Well, you need a bank account. You need a means to get the money.
Right. Okay. I guess the question is, I've given homeless people $5, $10 here and there, or just giving them food. But how do I know that they're not going to the back corner and buying more heroin?
Well, happily, the numbers are very, very optimistic when you look at the studies of what people do when they're getting income support. So work levels stay constant except for two groups: teenagers who graduate from high school at higher levels, and new moms who spend more time with their kids. But substance abuse does not go up. Mental health improves. Domestic violence goes down. Hospital visits go down. It's very, very positive on many, many dimensions. There, of course, will be some Americans who are having problems with substance abuse that might end up using the money on their habit, but other Americans will seek treatment. And the studies are clear that there is not a rampant increase in substance abuse with people receiving this sort of income support.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the positives, I guess you're saying the positives will outweigh a few people that may try to abuse the system, essentially.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's not like a lack of money is keeping people from doing drugs now. I mean, 7 Americans are dying of opiates every hour right now.
Wow.
And so it's not like somehow they're not finding the money to get drugs.
Gotcha. So to close up, I have a few just closing questions. I guess one around AI and how massive this is going to be for the people that are listening to this, millennials, high school graduates, even college graduates. If you were to advise your 2 children, now you have 2 children, how to prepare for this new economy where everything's going to be automated. Number one, what are the skill sets that are going to be most vital that people should be really investing in?
Yes.
That may not be important now, or it is still important now, but it's going to be way more important in the future.
Sure. So if you look at the jobs that are most subject to automation, it's not low education, high education. It's repetitive versus non-repetitive. So if you do a repetitive intellectual job like accounting or bookkeeping or a lot of lawyering, then you could be in trouble. If you do non-repetitive manual work like cutting hair or cleaning hotel rooms or landscaping, you're probably not going to be automated, because you can imagine trying to get some like hairdressing, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and never getting a robot to cut the hair.
So the key for a young person is to head towards non-routine tasks and environments, and have a few traits that are core to your professional life. One is adaptability, because things are going to change. So if you think, if I can just do this one thing, it's going to work out, that's probably not the case. You have to keep moving.
Right.
The second is teamwork, because a lot of the social elements are going to be the most difficult to automate. And then the third is resilience, where there's going to be some difficulty in a lot of the most important work, and you want to be the sort of person who can do that stuff and then just keep smiling and make it seem like like it's no problem at all. So again, that's adaptability, resilience, and teamwork.
Gotcha. So really,
a lot of entrepreneurial stuff, really. Pretty
Sure.
much like
Creativity.
Everyone's going to have to become more entrepreneurial, because the stable and secure jobs are not going to be there.
Gotcha. That's good to hear, I guess.
Yeah, for us, for everyone listening to this, that's good.
Yes.
But I literally have friends who are raising tens of millions of dollars to automate legal work. And if you look at the law school graduate underemployment and unemployment rates, I mean, they're just going up and up. So the answer is not more school, more training, more education. The answer is really developing your own personal capacities and your ability to contribute in a wide range of environments.
Gotcha. So rapid fire questions. Favorite book that you've gifted to someone else?
East of Eden. I just like John Steinbeck and Stories of America from that era.
Gotcha. I haven't actually, is it like a fiction book?
It is fiction. It's a great work of American literature, man.
I only know Canadian, sorry. Gotcha. And then what's a piece of wisdom
I tend to give a lot of people my book.
to your book? Yes. To
Yeah.
normal
I've given
people.
a lot of gifts.
What's a piece of wisdom that you've learned throughout your career that you really could have used in your 20s?
I wish I'd had a little more self-love or like self-compassion, because when things weren't going right, I was always really beating myself up and being like, oh man, and now looking back, if I could just go back to my younger self and say, everything's going to be all right, and like things are going to work out okay, and you're going to get married and have kids and run for president, all stuff like that. That'd be great to be able to share that.
Yeah.
But I think I should have enjoyed the journey a little bit more when I was a bit younger.
Were you always like a workaholic, kind of always on?
Well, I just had bunch of goals that I took a little bit too seriously, and that I was always thinking, how can I make progress towards certain goals? And some of those goals were personal, things like own a dog or whatnot, you know.
Sure.
So it's not like I was just like, oh, ooh, I have to like
I really
maximize
need this
certain
dog.
thing. Yeah. But I certainly could have enjoyed the ride a little bit more.
Yeah, that's actually a common thing that I hear all the time from really successful people, is just to like breathe, like relax. So everything's gonna be okay at the end of the day.
Yeah, everything is going to be okay. And particularly on the personal front, where now, you know, I met my wife when I was 31, and now we've got 2 beautiful kids. And yeah, and that was like a source of real pressure and anxiety before. But now, you know, looking back on the women that I was like trying to make things work with, in contrast to my wife, it was like,
Sure.
oh man, like I should have just waited for her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So last question, you have a chance to choose a running mate. You've got Elon Musk, The Rock, or Oprah. Who do you choose and why?
You know, it's definitely going to be either The Rock or Oprah.
You don't think Elon Musk would be a good guy to work with?
No, because I think he and I have some similar brain wiring. And so when you're trying to build a team, you don't want 2 of the same dude. Oh my God. Not to flatter myself and say I'm just like Elon, but, having read a lot of his stuff, like I think he and I are wired in some similar ways. So I would need someone that had strengths that I do not have, and certainly both The Rock and Oprah have strengths I do not have.
You have to choose one though. Which one would you think?
You know, if I had to choose one, I would say The Rock, just because I was a big Rock fan and WWE fan.
Yeah.
I feel like I just know him better.
Yeah.
As a result.
And you don't need to hire bodyguards, so it's low and expensive. Yeah.
Whereas with Oprah, I have a feeling the 2 of us would probably need some bodyguards.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Closing thoughts. Anything that you want to share with the audience? Any closing wisdom? And
No, thanks. Oh, I just want to say that if you are concerned about the impact of technology on the workforce, please do go to yang2020.com, join our campaign, and let's build a new kind of economy that puts humanity first again, because it's not going to happen without you, me, and other Americans making it real together. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Sean.
yeah, this is amazing. And for everyone that's interested, that kind of wants to dig deeper into AI, I would highly recommend The War on Normal People. This is a book that I've read personally back to back to prepare for this. And it was
thanks, man.
really fascinating. And also to check out The Startup Generation, which features Venture for America and Andrew's work that he's done there. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in.